like this, for lack of a better term, is beyond disturbing. So there's this couple in West Virginia. They had adopted a set of black children. Now they locked them inside of a barn and they were using them to do forced labor. Police showed up to the site, and with all of the evidence, you believe these people had the nerve to actually plead not guilty. Not guilty to abuse, not guilty to torture, not guilty to forced labor.
And I don't think I've ever seen an indictment like this in all of my time. It alleges human trafficking, human rights violations, the use of forced labor, human rights violations specific to the fact that these children were targeted because of their race, and their use as basically slaves from what the indictment alleges, along with human trafficking and neglect with serious risk of bodily injury or death. I don't find the bond to be sufficient.
Whitefeather and Lance were first arrested last October when a welfare check turned into the discovery of two teens apparently locked in a shed where investigators said they lived in deplorable conditions behind the Sissonville home. One other kid was found inside the house and two others were not home, all adopted by the couple. The indictment brought more than a dozen new charges against them alleging human trafficking and forced labor, also civil rights violations, as investigators believe they targeted these children specifically from a shelter because they were black, forcing them to work as slaves.
Jean Whitefeather, who's 62 years old, is being accused of spraying and exposing her four adopted children at that, to bear spray and using bear repellent on them. So she is actually facing now 4 counts of child abuse, whereas this guy, Donald Lance, he's 63 years old. He's being charged with 1 count of child abuse for striking one of the kids. That's some of the individual stuff. Together, they're both being charged with human trafficking of a minor, civil rights violations based on color, race, or ancestry, and get this one, use of a minor in forced labor. Now, what does that sound like?
Forcing them to work as slaves.
Now, you could throw in the other ones in there. Child neglect, creating a substantial risk for serious bodily injury. Now, this couple, they were both arrested in October 2023. In their house, they have a 16-year-old girl, a 14-year-old boy, both of them black. These kids were both found in a padlocked barn with no electricity, no running water, and no way out. There was a third child, a 9-year-old. Noticing a pattern, this child was found in a loft, no access to the home and no access to the other siblings. In total, in case you're wondering, there were about 5 children that were adopted. So when it comes to this couple, they've been in jail since June. Now, initially, a judge had actually revoked their bond and doubled it up to about $500,000 apiece.
Counts 9 through 12 allege the use of forced labor, which I read as slavery.
Bond was initially set at $200,000 cash, and they were both able to post it. Prosecutors have said in a new complaint for forfeiture, the couple sold a $725,000 80-acre ranch in Washington state and sold their Sissonville home to post bond, and they believe both of these properties were paid for through trafficking.
And in February, both of them made bail and were released to stand on trial. And as it stands right now, on December 2nd, the 2 of them pleaded not guilty. I don't know what went through their mind. Just in case you don't remember, this story was being covered a while back.
More than 4 months since 2 children were found in a barn in Sissonville without access to food or water. Their adopted parents charged with felony child neglect.
Now, a federal magistrate judge is ordering Child Protective Services to produce some documents about their situation in an ongoing class action lawsuit filed against the state. News Channel 3's Kimberly Donahue sifted through those court documents to explain the judge's decision.
More than 4 months after 2 children were found locked inside a closed-off area of a barn in Sissonville, and the children's adopted parents, Donald Lance and Jean Whitefeather, were charged with felony gross child neglect, Federal Magistrate Judge Cheryl Eifert has ordered Child Protective Services to provide information about the situation in ongoing class action litigation against the state of West Virginia. Eifert's order filed Monday grants the plaintiffs' request for production of documents from Child Protective Services requested in November. Those documents include, quote, all documents and communications regarding the adoptive children of Donald Ray Lance and Jean K. Whitefeather discovered in Sissonville, West Virginia, including any documents and communications regarding any investigation into allegations of abuse and neglect. In January, the state objected to that request, calling those documents, quote, not relevant to the subject.
Now, I swear to you, this next part, you absolutely cannot make this up. When they were testifying, the lady, Jean Whitefeather, she said that the barn was actually a teenage clubhouse.
You can't be this dumb.
Not an area that had no electricity, not an area that had no running water, not an area where they kept these kids confined. She said it was a teenage clubhouse. Now the neighbors, everyone knows how you always have that neighbor kind of peeking over at your business, taking a look at what you're doing. In this case, that came in handy because the neighbor said otherwise to the cops. She said the kids were being forced to perform farm labor. They were never allowed inside the residence except for the 9-year-old that was already trapped upstairs. And the 16-year-old, the oldest one, she told the cops when they got there, they had been locked in the barn for approximately 12 hours. The officer said that when they got there, they actually unlocked the door. The very first thing they noticed, and I quote, it was the horrible smell and the sifting heat. No circulation of air whatsoever. This is where you have kids. The cops said that the kids were feral and dirty. They didn't just protrude, but they reeked of body odor. And even the boy had open sores on his bare feet. Now, in case you're wondering, one of the siblings also told them that the sleeping conditions. What sleeping conditions? They were sleeping on the bare, cold concrete floor with no mattress, no covers. These adopted kids were basically subject to torture. But there is one silver lining, though.
Prosecutors have said in a new complaint for forfeiture, the couple sold a $725,000 80-acre ranch in Washington state and sold their Sissonville home to post bond. And they believe both of these properties were paid for through trafficking.
So Whitefeather, the lady, she had a brother. His name's Marcus Hughes. He posted a bond for about $200,000 to release the couple from the South Central Regional Jail. When they got out, they sold their home for about $295,000. However, though, and this is the silver lining, do you remember that one charge that we had mentioned about human trafficking? Well, because they had sold their home and because of what they were doing in that home, these profits could then be seen as profiting from human trafficking, so they can't use that. They're inaccessible to the defendant. And even if they could somehow prove that this money came from another source, what they're saying here is the money was still intended for trafficking and forced labor. So therefore, you don't have access to that money. You can't use it. I have a fair idea of what their punishment should be. I just can't say it here. But this is going to be ongoing, and I'm definitely going to be doing a follow-up. Let me know what it is that you guys think. If you think they should get life or worse, or if somehow, actually no, there is no somehow. We'll just leave it there. Let me know your thoughts. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like, and I will see you again on the next one. Be easy, y'all.
It alleges human trafficking, human rights violations, the use of forced labor, human rights violations specific to the fact that these children were targeted because of their race.